So good morning. Uh, Yesterday we had a very good, wonderful session, whole day. A lot of topics were discussed. So today we are starting with another wonderful topic. It's very close to my heart. It talks about how the credit, CO2 credit and debit mechanisms can be worked out for the Indian market. So we'll start with a presentation by my colleague Mr. Aviral. He'll We'll use this presentation for setting the context, and then we'll have the panel discussion. So I'll invite the panelist first. Uh, we have our president and CEO, Mr. Drew. Please, Drew, please. We have from Tata, Mr. Rahul. We have Avinash, Kumar from Earthood, and we have Sumantra from Acko.
A very good morning, everyone, and welcome to day 2. So in this session, we'll talk about how we can use carbon or CO2 credit debit mechanism to increase the ZEV uptake in India. So let's start with what is the current landscape. We know that road transport or the transport sector in India, it contributes to about 12% of emissions, and these are nearly about to double by 2050 if we don't do anything. And on the chart on the left, you can see on the road transport, what is the different share of all the different segments here. Mostly it's heavy duty vehicles, and then buses and light duty vehicles, and two-wheelers, followed by two-wheelers and three-wheelers. On the right, we can see the snapshot on where we are currently in terms of ZEV sales share. We see the absolute numbers as well as what is the percentage sales share. So in terms of absolute numbers, we have two-wheelers leading the ZEV sales, and in terms of percentage, we all know three-wheelers are just doing exceptionally well. Personal or passenger vehicles, the cars, they are at only about 3% of the ZEV penetration. Now when we move to commercial vehicle side, we have LCVs at about 1%, buses doing somewhat good at 3%, and then when we keep those both of these figures side by side, heavy duty vehicles contributing to about 40%, but we only have about 0.1% ZEV sales of maybe 400 or 500 vehicles. So here we are currently. This is 2024-2025 data. Now, one thing we know, and it is evident from, we have seen it from other markets, whenever we have good carbon CO2 emission standards or fuel consumption standards, we see a rise in sale of electric vehicles. And this is the snapshot from EU, where we had a target or a limit of 130 gram per kilometer till 2019, and then you can see from 2020 onwards they had to meet a target of 95 gram per kilometer. And this target, the EU manufacturers, they were able to achieve a little bit more with ease due to electric vehicles and the super credit mechanisms that they had. So now we know where we are and what is the way forward, what we can use. We have seen it in other markets. And in terms of standards, where are we? I think we are doing pretty good. For passenger cars, we are currently in CAFE phase 2, which is corporate average fuel economy phase 2. And then we have for 2027 onwards, CAFE phase 3 already proposed and under discussion. And for passenger cars, we have some super credits and flexibility mechanism also. For heavy duty vehicles, currently we are in phase 1, which is not CAFE. It is a MEP based standard. which means it's a minimum efficiency performance. So each vehicle has to meet a certain target, then it is allowed, otherwise it is not allowed. So currently it is not there that one inefficient vehicle can be balanced by a more efficient vehicles. But the good thing is the proposed norms, which are going to be starting from 2027, the CAFE phase 2 for heavy duty vehicle, it is CAFE based, and it also includes flexibilities, super credits. Light commercial vehicle, we are getting started on that. So BE has released the draft norms for 2027-2032 cycle, and this is the first time. Two-wheelers, we can see both of the two-wheeler seats are empty. We do not have anything. So yeah, that is to be noted. Now let's look at what do we have in our arsenal. What are the different major pathways that can lead to EV uptake? So first is, in your target or in your CAFE standards, you can give some flexibility mechanism. I'll go into detail on that. Or the other thing is straight away ZEV sales mandate. You say to the OEMs that by 2030 you should have X amount of sales going on. Now coming to the first, the flexibility mechanism. What it does is it gives the OEM flexibility, as they say. So if they are meeting the CAFE standards, so there is a target. If they are going above, they are given extra credits, and that's a good thing. So for every gram CO2 per kilometer or any unit we use, for every unit we can give them 1 credit, and they can use that credit in the same year. They can bank that credit, or they can sell that credit to any other manufacturer who is falling short on his target. As we can see, if any manufacturer is falling short, he goes into a deficit or a debt, and he can either buy credits, he can use his banked credits from other years. Otherwise he's non-compliant, and he is supposed to face a penalty. So in this session we'll be focusing more on the flexibility mechanism, and these are the few elements: averaging, banking, pooling, trading, and super credits. What does averaging means? It's simply that OEM has a lot of vehicles in its portfolio, and he can meet he can have a performance which is average over his fleet. So he does not, each vehicle needs to meet a standard. So that's a good flexibility to the OEM. Banking means that if he is earning a credit, he does not need to use that credit in the same year. He can say, I'll use these credit in the next year or the next to next year. So that is banking, just like we do with our money. Pooling refers to that if there is a group of manufacturers who want to come together and they want to meet the standard as a single unit. Mostly this happens in case of a parent organization and the companies falling under that umbrella, the subsidiaries. So they can go together and they can meet the target together by pooling their credits. Then we have trading. It's a little bit different from pooling. This is happening among the different OEMs. They can set up some price, decide among themselves, and buy or sell credits. Then we have something called super credit. Super credit is a kind of a tool or accounting tool for providing this flexibility, where we count a zero emission vehicle multiple times. So we can have a super credit of 3. What it essentially means that each zero emission vehicle, when accounting for an manufacturer's emissions, it will be counted 3 times. What it essentially does is it brings down the average. When you have large number of vehicle and among them some are zero emitting, so your actual performance figure gets improved. So that's why super credits are beneficial. Let's look at a real world case example of China, and there are a lot of countries where we can see this, but I have specifically chosen China for a reason. It's a very unique case where they have a dual credit policy. So China has two kind of targets for its OEM. There is a new energy vehicle target. They have a line that all the OEMs should meet this many sales share. If they are moving upward of that sales share, they are giving a new energy vehicle credit. If they are below that sales share, they are giving a new energy vehicle deficit. And the other target that they have to follow is CAFC, or the fuel consumption performance target. So again, simply two targets and two kind of credits: NEV credits and CAFC credits. So if they are meeting the corporate average fuel consumption credits, they can, if they are exceeding the target, they can bank their credits to for other years. They can transfer their credits to their affiliated companies, and yeah and they can, if they are not able to meet their CAFC target, then they can use their NEV credits from their own companies, or they can buy NEV credits from the other companies who are manufacturing zero emission vehicle. But the important thing is NEV credits are non like they cannot buy NEV credits if they are not manufacturing NEV vehicles. So every manufacturer uh, uh, has to have certain share of NEV vehicles. If after all this flexibility mechanism they are unable to meet their target, then they are giving penalties, and it can range from financial or maybe denial of type approval. So coming to this is the final slide that I have. It gives a snapshot on various countries. For US, we have taken a case of California. So pooling is there in all the countries. Super credits in India, it is also there in the draft norms. Averaging, we are already in cafe kind of regime. So averaging is there. Banking, we do not have currently. Same for trading, ZEV mandate. And penalty, while we talk about it, it's not clear like how it will be imposed and what it will be. So these are some open questions, and I look forward to insights from this esteemed panel. And thank you. Over to you, Ashok.
Thanks, Aviral. Thanks, Aviral, for the wonderful presentation and setting the context. I think you have touched upon a lot of words, talking about NEV credits, ZEV credits, and trading and trading mechanism, banking, averaging. So, I mean, these are some terms which kind of like when we are hearing for the first time, right? If I just set the context, why all these terms makes meaningful is, in India we have a cafe system, right? And this cafe system is presently a kind of a punitive measure, right? We force the manufacturers to meet a target, and if they don't meet a target, then they are being penalized. But there is no mechanism where we allow the manufacturers, or incentivize them to exceed their target. So, I mean, in today's discussion, we'll be touching upon what kind of policy framework or any mechanism can be drafted where these excess credits, if any OEM generates, how it can help them, or it can be monetized, or it can be, incentivize them so that they can they try to exceed their targets every year. So to start with, I'll pose my first question to Drew. I think Drew can share insights on how such systems, in other regions like California or China, how does it work, and what are the challenges that the OEMs must have faced over there? Drew.
Thank you, Ashok. Thank you for the question, and good morning, everybody. So credit trading has been used, as has been nicely pointed out, in all of the major markets for many years now. California, the United States, Europe, China. And just to give you some numbers to clarify what we are talking about, Tesla is a wonderful example of the value and benefits of policies that allow for manufacturers that are exceeding standards to then reap revenue streams from other manufacturers that are behind. That is a good thing. It makes some manufacturers unhappy, and some manufacturers who are exceeding get the benefit. That is good for public policy. So just to give you some numbers, in 2024, so last year, Tesla in California, based on the zero-emission vehicle policy program, received $2.76 billion. Billion dollars. In 2023, $1.79 billion. This year, projections are somewhere between 1.5 and 3, depending on how things pan out. Very, very large revenue streams that are almost pure profit. They didn't have to sell any additional vehicles. They didn't have to do any R&D. They just reap the benefits of actually being an early mover in the EV transition. And from a public policy perspective, that is an extraordinarily positive event. Undergirding that is penalties. If the government does not have penalties for exceeding the standards, there is no value to those standards. So in California, it's $10,000 per credit. And credits are provided by vehicles, and California puts its finger on the thumb. The government promotes longer range electric vehicles. So if your electric vehicle that you sell into the marketplace has 350-mile range, you get 4 credits for that vehicle, for example. Not just 1, but 4 credits. And a similar scale for PHEVs, but that's not really relevant here in India because you don't sell them, which is fine. So my point being, and in the early years when Tesla was just struggling, was just a startup that no one really was paying very much attention to, was selling very fancy electric vehicles to movie stars, right? Tesla's most of their profit came from California selling ZEV credits to major manufacturers. So an incredibly important program. In the last slide, showed by my colleagues from the team at the Delhi office, showed that question marks in the India program on penalties, question mark, enforcement, question mark, banking and trading, question mark. Those question marks have to be filled in, right? And so in order for a program to work in India, there would have to be requirements from the Bureau of Energy Efficiency for penalties, and then those penalties would have to be enforced. And I believe there would have to be statutory change, which would allow for credit trading, right now allowed. One of the other things that California does, and so does US EPA, and so does the US Department of Transportation, that's doing the CAFE program in the United States, is they publish manufacturer credit balances and transfers. Completely transparent, so that the public knows that Tata has excess credits for sale and that has sold those credits, for example, to, let's say, Suzuki Maruti, and that it is not anything that's done under the table. Right? All of that should be very, very public. And there's a dashboard in California that tracks all that. There's annual reports at the EPA that does that. Very, very important as well, that all of these things, because it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. But it will have the benefit, if done well. In India, you have this wonderful situation where you have domestic manufacturers which have done the right thing and have invested time and effort and energy into electrifying their vehicle fleets. And in a perfect world, we would reward those manufacturers, Tata and Mahindra, for example, for their early leadership in the government program. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thanks, Ro. I think you have touched upon topics like rewarding. There are some statutory change is required, how this trading can be enabled. So I'll put up my next question to Rahul. Rahul, Tata is doing good. I mean, in terms of selling the EVs, and uh, we know that there's a lot of buffer also with Tata when it comes to how uh, their target is and to what level they are at the present state. So, I mean, this question is very, very valid for Tata, that how this excess or the buffer that you have, is there if there is a mechanism that it gets incentivized in a way, how that policy framework could be.
Morning. And thank you for posing the question. I think what we have at the moment, I think the EV industry in India, with helpful policies from the government, got a jump start, no doubt. Again, both demand side as well as supply side through FAME and PLI. But I think we need to, and automotive industry is all about scale. This jump start is okay. We've got a certain spark. We've got about 4%. And if we look at various other examples across the world, if we do not transform this quickly into a sustainable scale, this will have a likelihood of petering out over a period of time and resulting in a lot of wastage of investment and resources that the industry and the government has put in. So it's very critical. And the answer lies on the last slide that was shown by Aviral. And again, as rightly indicated by Drew, the question marks which were there, if those are converted into some written down policies and a framework is put in place, will go a long way in not only ensuring certainty of demand, because PLI is there. OEMs and vendors have already invested to achieve a certain PLI. But if there is no demand uptake, the PLI is not going to materialize for the for the people who have invested. And as such, I think some sort of the Chinese policy of a dual credit system looks promising in the way that it not only puts CAFE norms, it also puts an and function in between with the new energy vehicle credits. And this forces OEMs to also sell a certain percentage of vehicles which are of new energy type. And I think what we could look at is, again, there will be a lot of resistance if you try to force it down the general public's throat. I think the government has to set up itself as an example and forget the ZEV mandates for the general public, but it can take itself for, government usually runs a large fleet of its own. It's through its own offices, its public sector units, the administration. So when the time comes for the fleet renewal within itself, it can take a certain well-published mandate, I think, and that would bring in a lot of certainty, because government's actions, because it is public money, will be seen as demonstration of confidence in the technology, and also would go in a long way in assuring the general public that this is a viable technology and this is not fly in the pan and this has got a long life. And I think the questions, again, government, by becoming from incentivizer only to becoming a participant by setting up a certain mandates in terms of their fleet percentages with new energy vehicles, I think will go a long way. And that would in turn, help just not only move only from subsidies and incentivization, but also to become an active player and demonstrating safety and confidence in the general new energy vehicles. And I think the policy framework for, especially for the trading, carbon trading, and I think there are well-established examples across the world. And China, to me, feels one of the best ones that I feel, because it is nationally mandated. And in India, nationally mandated policies tend to work a little better compared to state-initiated mandates or state-initiated policies, and that could be the way forward.
Thanks, Rahul. I think you have spoken about the new energy vehicle, that the dual credit policy that is there in China, and they have a well polished policy which enables the trading among the manufacturers. So right now that is missing in India. So I'll pose my next question to Avinash. So Avinash, you are the expert. I mean, you are involved in this carbon trading, though not in the transport sector, in other industries. So can you share your insights that if a framework has to be devised for the transport segment, what could it be? And whether there is any statutory rule existing in India where we can utilize those and get it done for the transport segment. Over to you.
Good morning. So right now, as you know, in the transport sector, the framework defined by Bureau of Energy Efficiency, the Indian carbon market. So right now, the transport sector is not there. So, but yes, like all the this transportation sector, the auto makers, they can always participate in the voluntary carbon market. And in the voluntary carbon market, they can define, what kind of, projects they are coming up. So in terms of carbon credits, I'm saying, so let's say, for example, if they're defining a charging infrastructure powered by the renewable energy, or second could be something like recycling the batteries and avoiding the new mining emissions. Third could be, a vehicle to grid wherein you can, reducing the peak demand of the coal consumption. So these are the projects, wherein these automakers or this particular sector, they can fetch the carbon credits. Because you will have to understand that, when you say ZEV and the credits, both are very different animals. Both are cousins, not the twins. So because, in terms of ZEV, you are producing more vehicles, in terms of, energy efficient, zero emission, and then you are getting some sort of a single credits. Whereas in terms of carbon credits, these are very real, measurable. You are avoiding the emissions, as compared to the baseline. So these are the like recycling of batteries and charging infrastructure off grid. So these are the areas wherein they can get the carbon credits. Plus, as you, I think my colleague also mentioned, what is happening in other part of the world. So for India, one thing I would like to demonstrate over here that, this market is quite new for India. Like, Bureau of Energy Efficiency come out, last year, and now this market will come into full-fledged force, I think, from next year onwards. A lot of things are going on, a lot of new things are coming up almost every second or third day. And so in terms of ZEV, we will have to, our market is right now very immature if you compare with, Europe or California. Like in California, I think the government is giving some sort of subsidies also. And in India right now, we don't have any subsidies. So if you see the Indian market with respect to ZEV is very specific to premium sector. Like, you see a lot of EV are in the premium segments, a lot of luxuries cars are there. So, but in terms of, low income segment side, we don't have EV penetration that too much. So what I see is that there might be a case of, when we say ZEV or when we say carbon credits or any other mechanism like that, where we want to encash the carbon reduction or carbon removal or carbon avoidance with the help of transport sector or with the help of ZEV, there should be a equity in mobility right now, which is it's missing in India, and this is something wherein we should act upon, and whatever penetration we are doing in the upper segment, this should be more towards the passenger cars or maybe 3-wheelers or 2-wheelers. Then you will get the real measurable benefit of carbon credits, because these are the areas, 3-wheelers, 2-wheelers, or tier 2, tier 3 cities, penetration of ZEVs. you will get the real benefit of carbon, because the adoption or absorption over there is much more as compared to tier 1 segment or luxuries car or SUVs. So yeah, so this is my take with respect to carbon credits, how this sector can achieve the carbon credits by following the 3 areas I mentioned about the renewable energy or off-grid or recycling. Yeah.
I think Avinash, you have pointed out some points which can be a good revenue generation for the OEMs, and if they can participate in the existing ICM through some becoming a non-voluntary entities. My next question is to Sumantra. I think Drew has pointed out that how in US all OEMs they take the credits from Tesla. I mean, if we imagine a similar situation happening in India, and I mean, you have been interacting with all the OEMs, will it pose a challenge? Because hypothetically, we are talking that Tata would be selling credits to Maruti, or Mahindra would be selling to some other OEM. So, is our OEMs will that pose a challenge or not?
Okay, first of all, good morning, everyone. Pleasure to be here, and congratulations to ICCT on completion of 20 years of operations and for this edition of the India Clean Transportation Summit as well. Pleasure to be here, as I said. And yes, a simple answer to that question would be, I don't think it should be a challenge, considering that if the benefits of purchasing those credits from an industry peer or industry competitor outweighs the penalties that one would have to pay. I think if not uniformly, at least some of them would be open to swallow their pride and have that deal with the competitor. But I think that's a very good option of trading. Another one I think I would like to highlight is that the pooling option would also be worth kind of considering. But I know in India you don't have conglomerates like Stellantis or let's say Renault, Nissan, Mitsubishi. But still in the future that can be considered. But at the very outset, what the government should convey to the stakeholders is, one is, of course, they have mentioned about the penalty, but I think some values to what the penalty would be, and also the incentivization. It should be incentivized. I mean, while the industry works towards meeting the norms set for 2027 to a tune of 91.7 grams per kilometer. That's a significant reduction from the current level of 113 grams or so. But the thing is, if two things are very clear, what is the penalty, the quantum of penalty, and what is the incentive? It's like not an apple-to-apple comparison, but when I was thinking about this and discussing about this theme, one example came to my mind is of safety, which also contributes towards sustainable mobility. In India, we have, just in the recent past, adopted the NCAP, India's own NCAP. Before that, we were following, OEMs were getting their cars tested voluntarily, or global NCAP was picking up cars randomly to crash test. Now, the margin of the test specs are significant compared to what is required to meet the law of the land. But the benefit of meeting those extra stringent norms, including by the company which Rahul represents, has a direct benefit to the maker. The consumer sees it, not to say, of course, to be able to sell in India, you have to meet the basic norms. And there are examples, we have observed, and we have observed a lot of discussions in forums wherein some OEMs who have met those global NCAP norms have been highly applauded and somewhere like criticized, even though they are larger players, but do not have the same performance when it comes to the global NCAP. But as I said, all of them meet the basic norms. So similar thing, I think, would also be could also happen in the case of emission, the CAFE norms. So if there is clarity, there is transparency, and I'm pretty sure, tomorrow if I'm in the market and I see, okay, this make has, okay, in terms of crash norms, this is what their performance is. In terms of average fuel efficiency, this is what, okay. So I think I would be more inclined towards going toward that particular brand. So I think that is another perspective that should be kind of considered. And as also mentioned by Rahul, I think government can, or rather should, also, if not lead, but also set an example. Because the fleet, I mean, the number would be humongous. I've not done any calculation. If you consider in the fleet at the ministry level and then go down to all the agencies to the state level, it's a huge, huge fleet. So as I said, if something, they themselves kind of do something to reduce their average, enhance their average fuel efficiency, and also thereby lower the emission, I think that will set a good, not only precedent, a good example, not only in India, at the global industry as well. Because India, with its scale and opportunity, I think we have great potential to showcase some, or if not set the norms, maybe at least set some good examples for industry globally to take note of. So that's what I want to say.
Thanks, Sumantra. I think you have picked up a very right example of NCAP, and you have touched upon a good point that the excess of credits needs to be marketed. So right now, the current regulation doesn't talk about advertising whether you are meeting or not. There is no information available. Just tits and bits comes out in the media some point of time, and it's only about those who are not meeting the target. So only the negative side is being shown, and the positiveness is not being marketed. So this is, I think, this is one a very good take that we can take, in this our discussion. Now, my next question is to Drew. Drew, Avinash has spoken about that how low-income groups needs to be catered. There has to be an equity when any policy is framed. Now, India is a very cost-competitive market. Bulk of our vehicles are being sold which are less than 10 lakhs. I think it's, if I'm not wrong, $3,000 something. It's very cheap. And if the BEVs or the battery electric vehicles has to be, having a mass acceptance, the price has to go down. So I think in California, they have some subsidy provisions for the low-income groups. Can you just, touch upon that?
So great question, thank you. One of the principles that policymakers are seeking to achieve is a just transition that doesn't leave behind any element of society, including those in the lower income groups. So there are a couple different policies that have been enacted in different parts of the world to deal with that issue. And it's also good for climate because you have a lot of vehicles sold to lower income groups, particularly in India. I'll start in the United States. So under the Biden administration, we extended, or the Biden administration extended, EV tax credits not only to new vehicles, but also to used vehicles. And if you look at the data, you find that at least in the United States, and I'm sure in most of the world, that new vehicles are typically purchased by the wealthier income groups, and then used vehicles are sold later on. And so creating a $4,000 tax credit for used vehicles, first-time sale, not on and on and on, but first-time sale, was very helpful. Again, another innovation was that instead of allowing for a tax credit, there was a tax credit, but the dealers were allowed to claim that tax credit. And because of that, the dealers could then give that value to the consumer at the time of sale. For those that didn't have enough cash to wait almost an entire year to get money back once you got your tax credit returned, that put that burden on the dealers, and then actually the administration actually created monthly transfers of cash to the dealers, so the dealers also weren't without cash flow for over a year. That was also helpful. So those were a couple policies, at least in the US, during the Biden administration, that helped with lower income individuals. In Europe, there's something which is quite popular these days called the social leasing program. France, I believe, was the country that first started that. There's good papers on the ICCT website analyzing those programs. There's a similar program in Washington State in the United States. And basically what it is providing government incentives for leasing of cars, but only for lower income individuals. So really focused on the bottom half of the income distribution for that program. And that's really a significant change. And I don't know if you all remember this, but years ago when the first round of EV tax credits in the United States, there was no income limit at all. And there were cartoons where Leonardo DiCaprio was buying his expensive Tesla Lotus vehicle for $150,000 and going to the federal government for a tax incentive. Right? So just to give you the spectrum on the other side. Policy has advanced a great deal since that time. There's income limits, there's vehicle price limits as well, and now even further with social leasing really focusing on the lowest income groups. So I as you mentioned, Ashok, I do think, and others here have mentioned, Avinash as well, that focusing on the lower income groups in India for the lower value vehicles, 10 lakh, for example, I think it's opportune right now to do that type of thing. So I think it's a great question, and I think there's lots of opportunities and lots of good examples around the world that India can look for. Thanks for the question.
Thanks, Ru. I think that needs to be worked out. Otherwise, we'll not have a higher share of the EVs in India because 80% of the market is from the low-income group. Now, my next question is to Rahul. Tata has its own ecosystem. So there are a lot of ancillary like Tata Power, Tata Steel, and Avinash has also spoken that some of these ancillaries can participate in the carbon market. I mean, making some charging infrastructure work. I mean, there are a couple of points where, though the OEMs can not directly get into the ICM market, but then through some of these ancillaries, it's possible. Now, Tata Motors doesn't get any incentives straight away because of the current CAFE system. But is it possible that through the Tata ecosystem, it can work wonders for Tata? I mean, they can utilize or they can get some money out of it?
So I think just to touch upon, I'll take your question, but I think I couldn't resist myself from taking the point that Drew was making earlier. I think it's a wonderful suggestion and an example to look at because right now for the zero emission vehicles, I think one of the critical point is there is no price discovery for the electric vehicles in the second-hand car sale market. And I think the way the Biden administration had given $4,000 credit for time or the first time sale of a new car, I think it's a good example to look at, because this would again give that sense of confidence to the buyer, saying that there is something that, there is an added vote of confidence in the technology per se. Now, having said that, I'll come to your question, Ashok. I think the trading in India, carbon trading, I think it's in its infancy, and we're still figuring out how the entire ecosystem works. But I think from a Tata ecosystem per se, we've been fortunate. I think we've been fortunate that we've got one group chairman who has set the direction, and for all of its group companies, and in fact that has helped us to take the first step in the market when there was no market that existed in India. Even though EVs were being sold in India for a lot more years, but it was a small niche community, mostly relegated to Bangalore and some metro cities. But making it mainstream was probably enabled by the group decision to a large extent. And I think when you look at it, EVs is, a customer is not just buying a product, and he is looking at it, his ownership has to be seamless. The charging and the operations needs to be accessible, and again the solution itself needs to be trustworthy. And this is where the Tata Group's entire this thing about trust, about a whole bunch of group companies coming together. I think Tata Power immensely helpful for us in the initial days. They have set up almost more than 150,000 plus home charging units. They have put up around 5,500 plus public charging points. Now, again, all of this will have its own, let's say, implications in terms of how green it is, or how each of these companies are, framing their long-term policies or sustainable policies. But I think all of this has helped us to take that first step in, with a sense of confidence that the products that we're bringing to the market is going to be adopted by consumers, because we've got group companies also helping us on the other side. And again, even if you look at TTL and TCS, they have been helpful in creating a map wherein they've mapped almost 17,000 plus public charging infrastructure or charging points. And again, if you look at our other group companies, Acko, Tata Autocomp, or Tata Chemicals, again, they're playing a significant role, not only in supply chain, providing raw materials for, Agratas and cell building. So a lot of localization, adding value within India is happening. At the same time, it is helping us go a long way in instilling a lot of confidence in the public, and about the longevity of the electric vehicles, and also ensuring that they've got to get a much more seamless experience as it goes along. But I think, again, Tata Group is all about trust and creating a green mobility experience, a holistic green mobility experience is what we are aiming for within the group. And no doubt the group companies have been helpful to us in this journey.
Thanks, Rahul. I do have a follow-up question, but before that, I'll pitch one question to Avinash. See, any system which you create for rewarding the OEMs, right? If there is an excess and you make a policy which reward them that they make more of these EVs and create more of excess credits. Now, there is a chance that greenwashing can happen, right? Because someone can find a loophole and then they will try to distort. So Avinash, I mean, you are well versed with how these systems work. So we need to be very careful that greenwashing shouldn't happen, and all these things needs to be brought into the policy right away.
Yeah, very interesting again question. So before I jump to that, I think the last, while answering last question, I just wanted to add one more thing. In terms of carbon credits, what three examples I gave. I think one more extended could be ELV, end of life vehicle. So as I mentioned in the right now the compliance market, there is no such mechanism wherein you can get the carbon credits. But yes, in voluntary market, I think MMCM they have come out with a methodology, and they have published on Sarkar Bono also. In the same methodology we can utilize, and end of life carbon credits can be achieved. I think one project is already registered. I think one of my friend is already here from MMCM, so he can discuss later on. Coming to the greenwashing, yes, and the greenwashing is very common. I think this is something which will pop up every now and then. Even right now, if you see, let's say in terms of ZEV, if tomorrow India adopt like a dual policy like China, so as I mentioned, ZEV and carbon credits both are a different animal, like both are cousins, not twins. So if somebody is selling more ZEV vehicle, whatever is the mandate or whatever is the obligation, in that case, you can, whether you want to club it with the carbon credits or not. So there can be a chance of double counting in that scenario. So in that case, it is very, very important that the regulatory authorities like Bureau of Energy Efficiency, they come out with a clear mandate how this can be stopped, and there should be a proper channel of doing verification, third-party verification. Right now, the kind of mechanism the Bureau has framed for third-party verification, I personally not very pleased with that, because like in companies like Earthood, we are a global VVV, global DOE. We have we have registered with all the leading registries, like right from Vera, Gold Standard, Sarkar Bono, you name any, we are, and we have a global accreditation under ISO 14065, another prestigious one. But the recent mechanism by Bureau, wherein they are allowing the certified energy auditors, I personally against that. But anyway, I will not go into that part. But coming back to the greenwashing, if this has to be avoided, then we will have to make sure that no double counting is allowed. Because what happens, in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, when we go very deep inside that, generally we talk in terms of scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emissions. And I always say whenever I go, like, fundamentally in this entire world, there's only one scope 1 emission. There's no scope 2, scope 3. If India has to report tomorrow, India will report only scope 1 emission. India will not be having any scope 2 or scope 3 emissions. But the problem is that we are not living in an idealistic world. So of course, scope 3 will always be there. So if everyone start reporting their scope 3, or scope 1 emission in a very idealistic or honest or sincere or transparent way, there will not be any scope 3. Now, in terms of this entire scale of ZEV or ELV or what is required, the need of an hour is that a proper mandate, proper third-party verification, and whosoever is doing third-party verification, that agency should be having the enough experience. They should be having the enough technical team leaders or functional area experts who can go and who can verify such kinds of whether the carbon credits which are being generated, they should be additional in nature. They should be they should not be double counting, and whatever methodologies is being followed, that is being followed properly. And then later on, the government of India or any government, let's say on that matter, they should be having a proper whatever logbook or dashboard. As Drew mentioned, it is always there. It is already there in California and other part of the world, wherein you can always see which OEM is selling number of ZEV, and which is overachieving the target, and who is underachieving the target. And whether later on tomorrow the government allows that trade-off between overachieving and underachieving. So there should be a proper dashboard, and that dashboard, again, if it is verified by some third party, it is good enough. But yet that's how you can avoid the greenwashing in the carbon market. Otherwise, the carbon market greenwashing is something very common.
Thanks, Avinash. You're right. Monitoring compliance is even more important than drafting a regulation. So I'll pose my next question to Rahul. You talked about the localization, right? We all know that most of our EVs are dependent on a global supply chain. Now, you also talked about ZEV mandate. Now, mostly a ZEV mandate, though it is put up on the OEMs, but basically it is to develop the local supply chain. You allow the tier one suppliers to meet their economy of scales by having a mandate kind of thing. So in India right now, we don't have an established supply chain. So do you feel that having a ZEV mandate would help? And how Tata is gearing up? I mean, because you have an ecosystem. So if there are some ancillary units like Tata, Tata Autocom, I think, yeah, and Tata Chemicals for batteries, would that help?
See, I think localization would happen on its own. One government has got PLI in place. So already many of the vendors as well as tier ones have applied to be a part of the PLI. And now I think what needs to happen is, while the initial investments are there, but if they are not going to be able to recover it, then the next set of investments which needs to come in, which needs to flow through, will not happen. And I think that's where my answer to the previous question was that we now need to create a demand certainty. And demand certainty can be helped by a long way by government itself becoming a participant in the demand creation rather than only sitting outside and being ready to provide a certain amount of incentives. Because India as let's say an emerging economy will have a certain appetite for funding these kind of incentives and subsidies. So I think the mandate itself would go, especially by becoming an example itself, will go a long way in providing that demand certainty and providing confidence to the tier ones to pump in the money that is required to set up the supply chain. And again, while the last few days or last few months have been a little, seesawing in terms of how tariffs and other things play out, also the rare earth minerals and other things which are cropping up. But again, these are temporary in nature, and if you're looking at the long term, there is no other this thing than localizing and getting in all the, and you need to be slightly flexible and agile, and which is what government has shown, that they are willing to look at the requirements of the industry, engage with the foreign governments if required. And this would, again, with a certain amount of flexibility and certain amount of coordination with the industry, they would be able to instill enough confidence and ensure that the ecosystem develops. And we not only become a supplier to Indian market, but also there are enough examples of Indian companies becoming global suppliers. There are enough examples of Indian companies supplying to Tesla as well, or any other global players now. And that's the way forward.
Thanks, Rahul. I think export is it's a very talked about topic right now in India, where even the government is pushing most of the OEMs that you should become an export hub. My next question is to Drew. Drew, Avinash, during his talk, he talked about double counting, right? And double counting of, and US has the mandate system where the Tesla has, benefited quite a lot. So, I mean, I'm just trying to understand whether such case has happened anytime where Tesla has tried to, done greenwashing or get into double counting.
I'm struggling actually to think of a good example or any example in the motor vehicle space. Generally, motor vehicle sales are well accounted for, and range is well accounted for, and so credits are relatively simple to calculate and are easily verifiable based on vehicle sales. And so, at least in my experience, I don't know of any cases in Europe or the United States or in China or in California where you've had problems with false double counting sales of credits. I really don't. I really don't. I think we should be clear about the differences in what at least I've been talking about, which is creating of credits within the very narrow market of motor vehicle compliance with fuel economy or CO₂ or ZEV mandates, and the broader carbon markets that my colleague to my left is talking about. Those are wildly different things, right? And we use the same term credit for that, but we should be very clear that those are different, right? In that market, right, which you're dealing typically with things that aren't so precisely regulated, right? The recycling of batteries, for example, is one of the things that you mentioned. Then greenwashing or double counting or things, I think, is more likely. It's more difficult. You have to be more worried about it. So I don't want to get confused about ESG and that type of a broad carbon market and the very narrow, regulated, very transparent vehicle market. I think that's probably all I'll mention there. And I think as long as you have transparency and you have a dashboard, like all of those things will go a great deal of making sure that you're not greenwashing or double counting in the narrow question of giving credits for excess over compliance for fuel economy standards, for example.
Thanks, Drew. I think making a foolproof system would be the key. And definitely in the coming days, this topic would be discussed quite a lot. And probably in the coming months or years, we would see such a system developed in India. So now I would like to open the floor to the audience for questions. We do see one hand over there. Can we pass on the mic?
Yes, so my basic question is that as far as the Indian car industry is concerned, it consists of very few players, basically like Mahindra, Tata, etc. So can't we have basically a kind of system where we can also focus on what you call technologies? For example, there's a start-stop, there's regenerative braking, there's a transmission ADAS system, and because Indian roads are very congested, and there's a lot of emission because of that also. So we can focus on that, and especially even in the manufacturing space also, we are finding that BYD, CATL, Chinese car industries are a lot more efficient because they use a lot of automation, a lot of these battery tech. There's a lot of less waste as far as their battery manufacturing and then their supply chain is concerned. So can't we have that kind of ecosystem, where we can have it, because carbon credit itself is not going to work. You have to take support of a lot of this connectivity technology and all of that. In future, because the battery technology itself will mature after some time, and because this lithium, etc., and there will be, and we will have to find some other avenues where we can cut emissions, etc. So I am asking the question from the ecosystem point of view. Thanks.
I think, Rahul, would you like to answer?
I'm thinking on my feet now, right?
So I think probably what he's asking, that if you look at energy markets, there's a lot of IoT happening in terms of giving some benefits out of it. So probably does the automation in the automobile industry can we have in due course of time where the credit can always be reflected on the dashboard and things like that for an individual player as far as a fleet owner player? Probably that is what would be a bigger perspective.
I think I got his initial questions in terms of, let's say, some of the technologies which are there. Purely, when you say EVs, uh, when you have an EV, regenerative braking and all of this is part and parcel of the product. I've not seen a product EV right now, barring the two-wheelers probably to some extent. And even there, you might have few players who might still be offering regenerative braking as well. But all the four-wheelers, they do provide a lot of technologies are already incorporated inside, which take advantage of ensuring that our carbon footprint is minimized to the maximum extent. We are not just a electric vehicle, but even within electric vehicle, we are still trying to maximize the wastage of power, if that's the ultimate question. And again, right now, barring Ola, I think cell manufacturing is still not happening within the nation. And we are yet to take that additional step, and localized cell manufacturing in India needs to happen. And to the best of this thing, industry is sourcing its cells from, we might not be the latest generation cells that China might be putting out to its own companies at this given moment, but we are not getting a 5-year-old cell technology or anything as such. And again, these are quite latest generation cells, and given the amount of competition and the energy efficiency increases that are happening, we are not utilizing, or the Indian industry itself is not utilizing an inferior technology or this thing. And of course, the advances are happening within the battery cells, chemical composition, and the energy density is increasing day by day. And all of this will keep on happening. And I think there will be an element of, let's say, learning and on-the-job improvement that even Indian companies, and I think this is an area which poses a little concern to the Indian companies, because first of all, there is a brand new investment that they are going to make. And let's say tomorrow, if a new technology emerges somewhere in the world which makes this redundant, what happens to the amount that they have invested? But I think this is part and parcel of playing in this industry, and OEMs will have to OEMs and vendors will have to invest and play the game, and you cannot just sit on the sidelines.
Thanks for your question. I think our intention is to spark this kind of discussion, and we'll keep on doing it, but we are falling short of time. So today we have discussed about a lot of points. I think equity-based system should be there, and it should be advertised, it should be marketed, and basically some kind of policy is required where the excess credits that are being generated by some OEMs, they needs to be rewarded. And such a policy would be really helpful for having, increasing the EV share in India, which is in need of our looking at the kind of, pollution or the energy security that India is facing through. So I would like to thank my panelists for, sharing their experiences and their insights. I think it has come out really well, and looking forward to, having this discussion taken forward by the policymakers and drafting some rules in the coming days. So thanks a lot. Having with this, we'll close.
Thank you for moderating it so well.
Thanks, Sumantra. I think we'll close the session. We'll go for a photograph. Yeah.